Hello friend, oi amigo, oi amiga. Welcome to this lesson of Welsh Inglês Técnico. This is the lesson Properties of Operations, or as Propriedades das Operações. In this lesson, we'll study the very basic properties of the operations that we saw in previous lessons. Remember that this is the video that contains the lesson that's just in English, só em inglês. There's another video where we go through the explanations and the hints in Portuguese. In this lesson, we will learn 3 properties of the operations in English. First, the commutative property, the associative property, and the distributive property. Let's begin with the commutative property. Commutative property. This is the property that says that the order of the operands does not matter. Again, the property that says that the order of the operands does not matter. This property applies to multiplication and addition. So, for example, with addition, we could say that 3 plus 7 is the same thing as 7 plus 3. 3 plus 7 equals 10. 7 plus 3 equals 10. So it's the same thing. We switched the order. We changed the order. We commuted the order. But the answer is the same. The same thing with multiplication. If we have 2 and 9, we can say 2 times 9, or we can switch them and say 9 times 2. 2 times 9, 9 times 2. The order does not matter. They both give us 18. The product is 18. So commutative property says that with addition and multiplication, we can change the order, but the result is the same. As we said, the commutative property is a property of addition and multiplication. It applies to addition and multiplication. It does not apply to subtraction and division. It is not a property of subtraction and division. Why not? Because the answers come out different. The answers are not the same when we switch the operands, when we commute the operands. For example, with subtraction, A minus B is not the same thing as B minus A. They give different answers. With division, A divided by B gives us a different answer from B divided by A. So they don't apply. Let's look at a couple of examples. 5 minus 2. Is it the same thing as 2 minus 5? No. The answers are different. 5 minus 2 is 3. 2 minus 5 is minus 3 or negative 3. So the two sides of the equation are different. So this does not work with subtraction. Also with division. 9 divided by 3 is not the same thing as 3 divided by 9. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 3 divided by 9 is 1/3. 3 is different from 1/3, so these are different. It doesn't work. So that shows that the commutative property works with addition and multiplication, but it does not work with subtraction or division. The next property we want to look at is the associative property. Associative property. Associative comes from the verb to associate or to group, to bring things together. And this is the property that says that the grouping of operands does not matter. The groupings, how we group the operands, does not matter. The expression here, does not matter, in this context means does not change the answer, does not change the result of the operation. The associative property applies to addition and multiplication. Just like the commutative property, it works with addition and it works with multiplication. Let's look at a couple of examples of the associative property of addition and multiplication using numbers. So, for example, with addition, if we have the numbers 1, 3, and 6, this property says that we can associate, we can group, we can perform the operation first on the 1 and 3, and then add in the 6, or we can group, associate the 3 and 6, and add in the 1, meaning the order doesn't change the answer. 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 6 is 10. 3 plus 6 is 9, plus 1 is 10. 10, 10, same thing, right? The order in which we performed the operation did not change the answer. It's the same thing with multiplication. If we have the numbers 2, 3, and 4, and we want to multiply them, associative property of multiplication says the order does not matter. We can choose to group the 2 and 3 together and then bring in the 4, or we can group the 3 and 4 together and bring in the 2 later. 2 times 3 is 6, times 4, 24. Or 3 times 4 is 12, times 2, 24. 24, 24, same thing. The way we grouped them did not change the result. Therefore, for addition and multiplication, the associative property works. Like with the commutative property, the associative property works for addition and multiplication, but does not work for subtraction and division. For example, if we have the numbers 3, 2, and 1, and we want to use subtraction, 3 minus 2 minus 1, if I do the 3 minus 2 first, that gives me 1, minus 1 gives me 0. But if I do the 2 minus 1 first, 2 minus 1 is 1, 3 minus 1 is 2. So doing it one way gives me 0, doing it the other way gives me 2. They're not the same. So the order that I did these, the way I grouped them, made a difference in the answer. So associative property does not work for subtraction. So if we try to use the associative property on division, and we have the numbers 8, 4, and 2, 8 divided by 4 divided by 2, and we group the 8 and 4 together, 8 divided by 4 gives us 2, and then 2 divided by 2 gives us 1. So the answer on this side is 1. On the other side, if we first choose to divide 4 by 2, that gives us 2. And we divide 8 by 2, that gives us 4. So one way gives us 1, the other way gives us 4. Those are different. So obviously, changing how we grouped these numbers affected the answer, changed the answer. So it did not work for subtraction or for division. Now finally, let's speak about the third property, the distributive property. The distributive property. This is often called the distributive property of multiplication. And when we think about this property, it is usually joined with addition. It's the distributive property of multiplication with respect to addition. Let's talk about the distributive property with an example, and then later we will get to a definition. Our example is simple, 5 times 6. The answer is easy, 30. But let's not talk about the answer right now. Let's talk about the distributive nature of multiplication. This property says that when two numbers multiply each other, the effect of that multiplication is distributed equally to all parcels of those numbers. So, for example, if we rewrote the 6 as a sum, we could say 1 plus 0 plus 5. We could say 2 plus 2 plus 2. But let's say 6 is 1 plus 2 plus 3 in this example. Then the effect of 5 times is felt equally, is distributed equally to each of those add-ins, 5 times 1, 5 times 2, 5 times 3. That means that 5 times 6 can be rewritten as 5 times 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is 6, and that the 5 multiplies the 1, just like the 5 multiplies the 2, and 5 multiplies the 3. The effect is distributed to each of the pieces. Of course, 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, 5 plus 10 is 15, plus 15 is 30. It gives us the same answer that we already knew. 6 times 5 is 30. So it works. What does that matter? It matters because now we have two ways of solving this problem. When we see a problem, 5 times 1 plus 2 plus 3, we can do it like we did at the beginning. Add the numbers 1, 2, and 3 to get 6. 5 times 6 is 30. Or we can do it like we have it on the bottom. Distribute the 5 to each of the pieces, multiply them, then add them together. One way that we express this in English is to say that the product of the sums is equal to the sum of the products. Once again, the product of the sums is equal to the sum of the products. So we've arrived at the end of this lesson on the properties of operations. Let's quickly review what we learned. We learned 3 properties: the commutative property, associative property, and distributive properties. Commutative property told us that the order of the operands does not matter. Associative property told us that the groupings of operands does not matter. Those two apply to multiplication and to addition. And then the distributive property of multiplication told us that the effect of multiplication can be distributed or is distributed equally to all parcels, all parts of a sum. The next step, if you haven't already listened to the lesson with the Portuguese explanations, pronunciations, and tips, go watch that video. See if it helps you with the lesson that's just in English. Okay? I've enjoyed spending time with you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.